Hello and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be going over something I had covered before, but in a little more detail. I felt the prior time where I was talking about what things shocked me in China, I missed a whole host of things, in part because I guess I had gotten used to it or thought they were a given, and then realized I didn't talk about these things. They're not necessarily a given for the first time or going over there. So I'm going to go ahead and cover these. Again, I've got a list. Here we go. First one, the big things that you will see across the whole of China is construction. Everywhere, anywhere, and in large numbers. There's an old joke that one of my expat friends said, which is, "What's the official bird of China?" I started thinking, I don't know, what is it? The crane. That's because you're going to see construction cranes everywhere. You know, even when they finish a building, there'll be another construction crane just down the block, putting up another building, and another, and another, and another, and another. So, just the amount of growth in infrastructure, whether it's train lines, or parking garages, malls, apartment buildings, you name it. They're constantly building. It's a huge part of their economy. And that was one of the things that was kind of a shocker to me. I'm like, wow, another building, another mall, are there enough people to support this? I mean, wow, how much money do they have, for all these projects? But apparently there's something. So that was a big shocker for me. But with that, it brings noise. So here in the suburbs, it's fairly quiet. You'll hear few people with exhaust in their car, or maybe every so often I hear somebody walking their dog or whatever. Or even if I go to downtown Miami, you get the usual noise from cars and, just the hustle and bustle of life. But the one thing that I know it was more so in China, where not just the construction noise, because I talked before about, just the grand amount of it, but you're also going to hear honking quite a bit. And that was one of the things that kind of shocked me when I was, first taking a taxi or just walking down the streets of China. It's just beep, beep, beep. Just being constantly on alert, because it's a honk, people just honk their horn, whether it's, hey, you're about to cut me off, careful. Hey, I want to pass. Hey, I'm trying to make a turn. Hey, speed up. Hey, slow down. Hi, how are you? For everything. And it was something students and I used to joke about. It seems like people honk for everything. Whereas here, if you're in a smaller town in the U.S., and this doesn't apply in China, I've been to smaller towns, I'd seen it. Here in smaller town America, if you honk, it's considered impolite. Like people will just turn around and, oh my God, he honked his horn. Because there's the idea that, be a little patient, things are a little slower in the small town. Big city, it's okay. But people, for a variety of reasons, are careful not to do it too much or in certain situations, because, let's face it, there are some crazy people out there. But in China, it's almost like people are laying on their horn. So that was a bit of a shock for me when I first got there. It took a lot of getting used to. Plus, fireworks, people just lighting up fireworks. Hey, we're having a grand opening. Hey, we're having a remodeling. Hey, we're getting married. Hey, so it's just, you've got the construction noise, you've got the honking of horns, you get the general traffic noise, plus just people talking, because that's the other thing too. I'm Hispanic, believe it or not, and one side of my family's Cuban. And one of the big stereotypes about Cubans is that we're all very loud. True. It's a true generalization. Sorry. Well, I thought Cubans were loud. Man, Chinese people can be really loud in the way that they talk in public, whether it's a restaurant, down the street, subway, doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that to be offensive. I'm just saying it's just a fact. That's just how they are. Part of it is probably because there's a lot of people, around the area and talking, so they have to make sure that they're heard, because you're competing with millions of other people around you, so to speak, so your voice has to carry. I get it. But even when there's few, they're still loud. So that all contributes to the overall noise level. The next thing that kind of shocked me was KTV. For those that don't know what KTV is, it's basically karaoke or karaoke television, you know. Now you're thinking, okay, so people going to bars and singing? Not quite. Karaoke in Asia, and I'll focus on China, it's a big part of their, I guess, the modern culture, where there are these nice facilities where you rent out a room. It could be a large room or a small room, doesn't matter. And you pay a certain amount per hour or half hour, and then they've got a list of songs, and you know, you can order drinks and food and all that and have a good time and just sing to your heart's desire. I didn't realize until I had moved to China how big of a thing this was. You can go to, you know, down most streets and you'd find one. It would be either chain place or small place, but a lot of them were big business. And I had gone to a few myself too here, when I had gone with some coworkers and some friends. Did I sing? Yes. Am I tone deaf? Definitely. But again, it doesn't matter if you are. It's just a social experience that people share, just to let off steam, relax, have some fun, you know, kind of an escape from everyday life. But it's certainly something I didn't expect to see at all. So of course, when I left China to go to Japan and I saw it, I go, oh yeah, been there, done that. Still did it, but it was something that definitely, China was my introduction into it. So, next thing, face. And I don't mean this face, I mean the metaphorical face. For those that don't know what face is sort of like giving someone respect or giving someone their due. So you often hear the phrase lose face, which is when you disrespect someone or make them look bad. And face is a huge thing in Asia in general, not just China. But since China was my introduction to Asia, I'm going to talk about China. People don't like to be embarrassed, and they don't like when you make them look bad in front of others. So if you're working at a company and someone does something wrong and you berate them in front of other people, they say, oh, I lost face. It doesn't matter that you're right. It doesn't matter that they did something wrong. It's the fact that they have been disrespected, and in a very public way. So in a lot of your dealings, you have to be careful because people will take the stuff that you say to heart. Again, regardless of whether they're right, you're right, and they're wrong, you know, or whether it was just a foolish thing to do or say, and it gets pointed, once it gets pointed out. So it's one of the things I had to kind of keep in mind when I was talking to people is, okay, is this going to be really offensive? Is this going to make them embarrass them in front of everybody and make them lose face? Now, I didn't always think that way, even when I knew what face was. I'm still very much a believer in you do something wrong, it needs to be pointed out. Now, you don't have to be mean and nasty about it. Of course, there are exceptions, but if something's wrong, if I do something wrong, I want somebody to point it out. You know, hey, you could have done this other way. Hey, that's not how things are done. You need to do it this way. Okay, fair enough, move on. But even when you do that in China, you can still make someone lose face. So, next thing. One of the things I noticed right away, and it happened a few times during my first month, and every so often on subsequent trips this would occur too, the people asking to take photos with you. Now, I had with the exception of maybe when I get together with friends or family or people I haven't seen in a long time, we'll do the whole, hey, let's take a photo to remember this moment. But it's few and far between. In China, it seemed it was really common for people to go up to foreigners and ask to take photos. And I'll give a few examples in some other videos if I haven't already. But I remember just walking down Tianjin with a buddy, and people just walking up to us and saying, "Oh, hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Good. You? Oh, what's your name? Where are you from? Oh, can I take a picture with you?" And the first few times that happened, I was surprised and kind of flattered that this stranger would want to take a picture with me. Say, okay, sure. Stand by. Somebody would either take the picture or it would be a selfie, and okay, nice to see you, nice to see you too, bye, and that was the end of it. Now, generally, it's just people are just curious, and they're like, "Oh, look, a foreign face," and maybe they moved from a small town and they've never seen a foreigner before in person, or they think you have an interesting look, whatever, the exoticness of your presence, or they just want to remember that experience. Fair enough. It could also be a case where, and I remember one of my expat friends who's been there for many, many, many years. The guy's a China expert as far as I'm concerned, where he would just tell people no, and I would say, "Why are you saying no?" And he would say, "We got to be careful. Some of the people are doing it because decent people, or at least most of them. But there are a few people who do this because they maybe run a school or a business, and they'll take a picture to use as marketing or advertisement to say, hey, this is one of my teachers at my school, or hey, this is my teacher when I was learning English, or this is my business partner. It's a foreign businessman." So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You don't know who's doing that. My face might be somewhere in China, but I've heard these stories before in the news and from a couple expats who, walking around a city or something and happen to see a billboard and there's their face and they're like, "I never allowed that. Why am I there?" Because copyright laws are different and you don't speak the language. There's nothing you can do. So it's kind of a negative when that happens. I'm not saying everybody does that, but it's just one of those things that kind of shocked me about China, that people go and ask, and sometimes that could lead to that situation, but que sera. Another thing that kind of surprised me about China are the free museums. And in other places I had traveled to, when you go to a museum, you have to pay. It was just kind of a given. However, in China, I noticed if you go to mostly the national museums, although I think there were a few smaller museums that I went to, all you had to do was show your ID. And that's it. Okay, welcome, and you get in for free. And I was like, really? And these are, I'm not talking about any rinky-dinky museum. These are massive museums with things from, multiple dynasties in China, maybe all the way going back to the, almost a Neolithic period. Museums that could take you a day or days to go through, with beautiful exhibits and pottery and sculpture and these ancient works of art and weapons and architecture and all really interesting history. And these things were free. And I know some people say, well, it's because it's more of a socialist / communist country. They can just pull all those resources and build these things. Fair enough. Yes, they can. And yes, it's paid for. But I thought that was neat, that you could just walk into a museum and see your country's own history and the artifacts and the things from those periods freely. It was great. I loved it. It was a shock. It was a good shock. Next, studying. Or I guess study life for students. Now, as a person who'd gone through all my education in the United States, and remembering my days at school, and I'd go to class, be at school maybe 7:30 in the morning, and either start at that time or 8 o'clock and go all the way through to 2:30, and then maybe there'd be martial arts practice or sports or something, and then go home, do homework, and have dinner, watch TV, go to sleep, repeat for many years. Or when I got to college, I can kind of make my own schedule. I had an idea of what study life was, and student life was for us. And like anybody in any country, until you've been abroad, you figure it's probably about the same for everyone. Not China. Students will wake up maybe about 6 in the morning, have breakfast, start studying, go to school, study and take all their classes, be bombarded with homework, come home, or maybe go to a language training center or some extra activities. Finally go home, eat dinner, and study and study and study until late at night. And they'll do it sometimes until 2 in the morning, wake up at 6 and repeat and repeat and repeat. And I remember talking to a lot of adults and the few teenagers that we had at the time at my training center. And they would confirm, yeah, they do this even on weekends. There's this massive emphasis on studying, which I'll say I think it's a little bit overdone. There's only so much you can absorb, and the longer you do something and the more you cut into your sleep, the less efficient you're going to be no matter what it is. But it just seemed like Chinese people study a lot. And I was kind of shocked that this was a norm, that these poor students were busting their hump sometimes 7 days a week. Which would explain too why you'll notice a good amount of Chinese people have bad eyesight. They spend so much time reading, and I'm sure now with technology behind screens that they're just bombarding their eyes, with photons, and it's just destroying their vision with the length of time they're spending doing this thing. And this goes in, and to a degree will proceed into college until they, go out into the work life. This is their life. And it was just crazy, I thought, just the amount of time they spend studying. Next point, and related to what I was saying about studying, is the passing grade. In China, generally speaking, a passing grade is a 60. Now I paused so you can digest that. The passing grade is a 60 or 60%, generally speaking. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, it can't be that low, or maybe that's if the student tries hard and, that's the best they can do, they'll go ahead and pass them. No. Even if the student doesn't try, shows up the first day of class, shows up on the day of the final, bombs the final, he or she will pass. And I know it's a big shocker because a lot of people think or fall back on the stereotype of Asians in general, and the Chinese being a group of Asians, being super smart, very studious, and it also kind of flies in the face of what I had said prior about them studying so much that they must be geniuses. Well, like every generalization, it's not 100% true. And in this case, it isn't. This is not to say that there aren't some smart Chinese people. There are quite a few. But if you're a student, a 60, generally speaking, is a passing grade. Now, I haven't been in country since January of 2020. However, I'm still in contact with people on the ground there. And I remember speaking to many people while I was there that were teaching in private schools, public schools, elementary schools, middle schools, kindergartens, universities, training centers, of course. And whenever there was a grade, the 60 was the bar. Now, exceptions to this would be if a student commits an act of violence against a teacher or the school, or has some major underlying issue, they might fail or be transferred out of the school. But as a whole, whether the student studies or not, 60 will be a passing grade. And another thing some people might be thinking is, well, in my country, whether it's the US or somewhere else, I remember situations where, a 60 was also considered a passing grade, because maybe the bell curve was really low. And I don't doubt that happens. And I've seen it here in the US as well, where there was a college level chemistry class that I took, and a 60 was an A. But the subject of this conversation is China and things that shocked me in China, not things that shocked me in my home country. Otherwise, I'd have to title this differently. So I'm focusing specifically on China. Now, like I said, there are exceptions to this. From one of my contacts mentioned that in their college level class, there were students who couldn't attain a 60, that either because of language barrier issues or the content of the material being above their heads, that students couldn't get to 60. So what did the teacher do? Lowered it to a 40, and that was considered a passing grade. And again, it's most likely because of the bell curve. So it can be lower. I know another teacher who mentioned that in his international school, the bar was set to 70. And students, had to meet that criteria. But again, if you have a student who's lazy, who doesn't do the work, who doesn't try, and knows that you're going to pass them, you're going to have to give them that 70 or that 40 or that 60, period, whether you like it or not. And that was one thing that shocked me. Or that was another thing that shocked me in China, was that this was the norm, not the exception. So, I don't say this to insult anyone, I don't say it to belittle anyone, and I'm not insinuating anything negative. I'm just stating matters of fact. As of this day, that's what it is. It may change in the future, right? Your school might be an exception. But by far and large, the people on the ground there to this day tell me this continues to go on. Next point. Drinking age in China. Now, here and forgive me if I say in the US, but I have to use a point of reference. Sorry, it's not being arrogant, not looking down on anyone, just point of reference. In my own culture, 21 is a drinking age. And here, unlike some other videos where I don't really give my opinion on certain things, I'll give my opinion here. That's stupid. It used to be 18 was the minimum drinking age, in part because 18 is when you can get into the military. 18 is when you can have a handgun. 18 is when you can smoke. 18 is, when you're considered a legal adult. So I think it should match that. In China, it is 18. Kudos to you, China, for that. However, it's a very unenforced 18. What do I mean? Well, I remember students who were middle school and early high school students going out and drinking. They go to a restaurant, order a meal, and order a beer. And if you know anything about Chinese students, they usually wear these jumpsuits. And part of the reason they wear this, besides the fact that it's more comfortable for them to do any kind of PE activities, is so that if the student is off campus, anyone can recognize that that's a student from a school, or not a college student, let's say that. Just like in Japan, if you see a girl, girls in these skirts and a certain kind of color outfit, those are students, high school, middle school students. Same thing applies in China, where men and women, boys and girls, will wear these, kind of tracksuits. And you'll see them go in and do this. So the restaurant owner knows that they're underage. They know they're underage. People around them know they're underage, but they still get served alcohol, whether it's a beer or a baijiu or a wine. And I remember asking students this. Don't you guys have a drinking age? And they'll say, no, we don't have a drinking age. And I remember going on to Chinese websites, government websites, where it said, yeah, 18 is the drinking age. So I knew what the real drinking age was. And I'd tell them, that, oh, but, it's no big deal. And I said, this is a young adult who's still developing drinking, who's not 18 yet. And your rule says 18. Here's the explanation I got from them. Well, as long as they're not getting drunk, that's okay. If they're eating and they're only having one beer, it's all right. They're not going to get drunk. It's an interesting way of seeing it, you know. And if you're from Germany, which I believe the drinking age is 14, 18 seems a long way, right? But it was a shock to me to see that there's 18 is the age, but it's really unenforced age. And especially if they're outside of school and they're dressed up like a normal local, they can go out to a club, you know, late at night, barring parents stopping them from doing it, and get drunk. So, anyhow, I think I'll stop here. I think I covered quite a bit of supplemental things that I missed the first time, talking about things that shocked me in China. If there's anything else that maybe you experienced in China that shocked you, that you felt I didn't talk about or didn't give my reaction to, or maybe it's just something I forgot, put in the comments below. And again, in a future video I might do a part 3 and go through those things and anything else that I might come up with. Till then, see you guys in the next video.